Hi there, my name is Anais. Welcome to my content. If you're new here, it's really great to have you here. This video is about an open source conference happening next week called State of OpenCon. Now, I had the chance to talk to OpenUK's CEO Amanda Brooke about the conference, State of OpenCon, the ecosystem as a whole, the rise of AI, as well as the challenges we have in the UK open source ecosystem, as well as how you can make the best out of the conference next week. So let's get started with the interview. Who is Amanda Brooke? What is State of OpenCon?
Hi, I'm Amanda Brock. I'm the CEO at OpenUK, and I've been in this role for 4 years. I'm very excited that we're going to be hosting our second State of OpenCon in London next week on 6th and 7th of February at the brewery on Chiswell Street. I've been in OpenUK for 4 years, and I suppose I'm the founder because I joined an organization which was very, very different to what we've created as a community over the last 4 years. And with people like Anais and the UK's open technologists, so open source software, open hardware, open data, open standards, open AI. We've brought all of those folk together to create a very special organization that represents the UK's community. And that community is calling out to the rest of the world. London is calling the rest of the open tech community to join us on the 6th and 7th of February at State of OpenCon.
So what was the process for organizing the second edition of State of OpenCon? And what were the changes between last year's conference and this year's conferences? Who is the organizing team?
So Anais, we're very lucky. We've got a lot of the people who were involved in last year, whether they're paid staff or volunteers working on the conference again. And we have Sam Hepburn and Kim Fletcher, who are just incredible, who organise our volunteer team. We have about 60 volunteers who are going to be the staff at the event. We have an advisory board of 40 to 50 people who've been helping me for the last few months. They're based globally. We then have a small team of paid staff led by Chloe Telford, and Chloe is indomitable and will be in charge of the venue through Tuesday and Wednesday while I'm hosting. Andy Piper, who is currently in FOSDEM with the Mastodon community. Andy has been leading on our content and managing our speakers. We have almost 200 speakers this year. Last year we had 135. This year we've got almost 200. The organization around that is just incredible. The team have really pulled together, and we've had so much support from people across the community. So I kind of view this as everybody's conference. We've raised the money, we've pulled the infrastructure together, and then the community really come together. You know, nobody pays to speak at our conference. Everybody who's on a stage merits their place. They've earned that through their hard work. So I think that creates a sort of ecosystem around the conference that has a life of its own.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Specifically to last year's conference, lots of people highlighted how inclusive it was, how diverse the conference was. I have some of the stats here. There were 38% women and non-binary people, then 14% described themselves as neurodivergent, 49% of attendees identified as non-white. How did you make this happen, right? What went into creating such a diverse environment? Do you think it's because OpenUK is women-led, or because lots of the speakers are women, or how did that come about that the attendee list as well was so different to what we see at lots and lots of other conferences?
Yeah. So if I knew the answer to that, I'd have a winning formula, right? So we're trying to Yeah, no, I would share it with everybody. We're trying to recreate it. I mean, James Governor wrote about it as the conference that women wanted to attend. And I think it has quite a different feel. And I suspect it will have that feel again this year, where it is very inclusive. And what we've done is we are not a commercial organization. So we've kept the price down. We keep the tickets at $199, which makes them affordable for most people. If your companies are currently working on restrictions on what they'll spend, which many are, you can still probably attend. If your company won't pay and you're part of the open source community, we had 100 free places, 100 free places for students, 100 free places for the unemployed. They are mostly gone. We still have a few, but they are mostly gone. And then we manage things like the speaker tickets, and we reallocate the ones where we know speakers are only going to be there one day into the community as well. So what it does is it creates something that's accessible. And then at the same time, because of our generosity of our sponsors, what we're able to do is put on a conference you would normally be spending £1,000 to attend. We leverage our whole community's relationships globally, and we're able to bring people, really convene the global open tech sector in London. And if you look across our plenaries, if you look across our speakers, you'll see this is the conference that the Bay Area is traveling to. You know, we have so much of Silicon Valley joining us. I doubt the UK's ever had as many speakers from there or from the US in a tech conference. And I think that inclusivity comes from making it financially accessible. But I also think it comes from exactly the point you made about having people like you visible. So we do make sure that we have a very diverse group of people who are the hosts, who are in the CFP committee. And we do something that I don't think any other conference does, which we have a score in the CFP process against EDI and a score against sustainability. And we ask if, yeah, and I think that makes a difference. We ask if you aren't able to represent that as an individual, that you think about it, what you're saying, and maybe shout out another project or shout out another person who represents that and help to bring that theme to it. But I would never want it to become known only as an EDI conference. I think what it is, because we're not an EDI conference, I think what it is a conference that makes it easy to attend, that makes it feel comfortable. I often say when people ask me about how to get into tech or how you encourage a more diverse tech sector, that the issue isn't once you get through the door. Right, people are generally nice to you once you know them. It's getting to meet them and it's getting through that door, or even knowing the door exists. And you know, that's what we've tried to do to really bring this to people's attention. So I do know that last year we had, as you mentioned, just under 40% of our speakers weren't male. And this year I know it's over 40. I don't know exactly what percentage it is. So I think we've started as we mean to go on, but I don't know yet about the delegates. I won't know till next week.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting what you just mentioned, knowing that the door exists to get into tech, to get into open source. And last year I was doing the interviews with lots of attendees, right? And many of them were new to open source, not new to the tech space, but new to these different communities, right? And that was just really incredible to see that they had a space at an open source conference. So it felt like they were included, versus in many other conferences, you already have to know something, you have to know somebody to feel like you are part of it, right? That was very different at State of OpenCon.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you found that.
Yeah, that was definitely a pattern, talking to lots of different people. Yeah. Now, I found a quote from you from the beginning of 2023. And you basically say, for open source, either the community wins in the next 5 years or it loses and everything collapses.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty dramatic quote, right? So I don't know the full context in which the quote was shared, but I'm just wondering, from your perspective, how did the community and the health of the community change from last year, with OpenCon, to this year? And what would you say, what kind of track are we on? And what has to happen to improve it?
I was ahead of my time with that quote. And I think we've been a little bit ahead of a time for a couple of years. And we've been that because of Brexit. So a lot of things were forced on us here in the UK. With that exit from Europe. One of them was that geopolitical shift and seeing the impacts of that, and splits where, as an open community, we should be collaborating globally. We shouldn't differentiate between people. It's really important to us that anyone can use open source for any purpose. So that's at the heart of what we do. And it was hard because we saw some of our European colleagues rejecting us, not wanting to collaborate anymore, or not being able to because of their governments and things. So that was difficult. And I think all of that had us on a trajectory of thinking where, talking to people, it became apparent that open source has won, but what has it won? So we've won a battle, where 96% of stacks are reliant on open source software, where 76% of software is open source. However, do we have a future is the question. And that depends on us educating the users, because the scale of adoption has not been matched by scale of understanding and good practice.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of skills, utilization in the public sector, utilization in businesses, and AI. And AI last year really put us front and center. Now, I'm going to be honest, I haven't read it fully, but in the last hour, the House of Lords have released their inquiry report from the LLM investigation. And we didn't know it was happening. We submitted late, but we had to do it very quickly. So it's not perfect with a written response, but we didn't get to give evidence, and hardly anybody in the open community got to give evidence orally. Those that did were Mozilla and Hugging Face. Stability AI and Professor Neil Lawrence. Now, Stability AI and Professor Neil Lawrence will be part of our plenaries, and they'll talk about that. But this report is just from an initial scan, hesitant about open. And I think there's a real issue there where they don't understand because they're not hearing the right voices. They're not hearing 30 years of experience. They're not hearing the business people who do open source when they're thinking about AI. Because open as it applies to AI and our open source software that builds our infrastructure are really linked. And there's a real risk there. Now, that's the sort of conversation we're going to have in the plenaries and across the 8 tracks is around the future of open source and what the external and internal pressures are, and then also around AI and open innovation and open source and how that needs to work. But we have 3 government departments actually, but 2 doing consultation. So we have the Home Office and we have DCIT's AI team who organised the summit with the Prime Minister. They're going to be on site and they're going to be in a room in the afternoons doing consultation direct with the open source communities. And I don't think any government in the world has done this. So they're going to sit and they're going to listen to us. And we're actually going to be heard about what open source is, how it works. And we're going to help them to understand the benefits and help them to understand the risks and how they might be able to, whether it's regulation or codes of conduct, how they might be able to work with us to put appropriate forms of safeguarding in place. So, and I mean safeguarding open source as much as I mean safeguarding the rest of the world. So this is a real opportunity, a sort of call to arms for the community. And if you haven't got a ticket and you want to be heard, you can either pay $199 or get one of those last few tickets if you're part of the community, those last few free tickets. But I think this is going to be a really important conversation this year. And I think that will help to impact the UK. But we also have this bigger global picture as to whether or not open source will succeed. And it won't succeed if we don't change things.
Yeah. It's interesting you touched upon AI, right? And this year, there's a complete new track on AI openness that wasn't there last year. I think that's amazing to see. And I think also what you just mentioned, that we have within the open source community, lots and lots of projects are moving to integrate AI, and some enterprise business who see the shift and the interest try to integrate it, right? But at the same time, from a more legal perspective, legislation point of view, there's a huge pushback that we might not, in the open source community where we can experiment, might not feel it as much necessarily.
Yeah. And I think there's different issues there, right? I think there's almost 3 sets of issues. So you've got, how is AI going to impact our development processes and our development and open source? How is open source going to be treated by regulators and policymakers? And then there's this third piece that you're raising. And I think all 3 need to be brought together and we need to think about it. So what we didn't do was a CFP on the AI track. We had it in everything else, and every track has AI in it. Every single track has something around AI. But then we've got the AI policy zone where we have a little cinema and we'll be showcasing. So if you happen to be an AI developer who does OpenAI and you want us to showcase your work, you need to get in touch with admin@openuk.uk by Monday. And we will have content there on a loop showing what's happening with AI in the open. And then we will have the consultations going on with the Home Office and DCIT, and Innovate UK will also be there, and they'll have a table and they'll be available, through the whole conference to talk to people about funding and how AI and open source is being funded.
Amazing. Is there anything in particular you're looking for next week at the, one thing that would make your highlight of the conference?
I think what's important to me is that we open conversations that the people who want to use open source and the people who create open source don't always get involved in. And we open those conversations up to the whole community so they understand what's going on in the policy and regulatory side. They understand the threats, they understand the opportunity, and they just are aware. And I think all too often a small group of people end up having those conversations, and that's not what open source is all about.
Exactly. Totally. Amazing point. Yeah. Last thing, what would you recommend attendees to do to get the best out of State of OpenCon next week?
So turn up early, stay late, enjoy the party in the evening, because that's a great opportunity to meet other people. Take those opportunities to do the booth crawl, take the opportunities to do the the interactive things that you can with the table holders, with other delegates. Meet people, because that's what community is all about. And all too often we end up working in silos, or we work at home and we don't get to engage enough. But I would also take a little bit of time over the weekend, because the sheer scale of content is quite overwhelming. We've got almost 200 speakers. We've got 8 tracks across the 2 days. I think 6 that are on 2 days and 2 that are on 1 day, as well as that AI consultation and the plenaries. So I think just take half an hour, have a look through it, prepare, and know the things that you don't want to miss, because those are different for everybody. And make sure that you're prepared. But I just hope that you'll come along and enjoy yourselves.
Awesome. Any other closing thoughts? Any other things you want to share?
I think I'll share that we are going to be holding SUCON 25 on the 4th and 5th of February at the South Bank in London. So
Amazing.
Yet another new venue. So we're going into this with a great deal of confidence. We've pulled a lot together as a small team. It won't be perfect. We might be a bit frayed at the edges, so please bear with us and make the most of your time with us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. If you enjoyed this interview, I would highly appreciate if you would give it a thumbs up, and also share it on your own channels. Share it on your Twitter account, on your other social media sites such as LinkedIn, and subscribe to my channel for upcoming videos. I will be at State of OpenCon, so if you see me, come say hi. I'm a friendly human being who loves to have a chat. I hope to see you soon, whether in person at a conference or in my next video. Have an amazing day and weekend. Bye bye.